right, Brandon, Jessica, hey, congratulations on Night of the Reaper.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir.
You know what? These are the fun movies that we love watching on a Friday and Saturday night. So, Brandon, I'm going to toss it, the first question to you is where the original idea came from, because I find the style a lot different from like Superhost and The Puppet Man, which are all Shudder films that I have watched.
hmm
But what about this film?
like when I made Superhost, I started my career making very dark and moody mom grief horror things like mothers in peril, kids in peril, all this stuff. Very bad, making you feel bad. Superhost was like a step away from that. It was like, hey, can we do something fun and have these kind of larger than life characters doing this stuff and still maintain that kind of, the scares when you need it and stuff like that. And then Puppet Man, I kind of returned back to this very dark, very brooding, just not a lot of fun. And so making this, it was an opportunity. We're doing the 80s and we've got Pat Benatar music, and we're just like, let's lean into having fun because at the end of the day, I want to make, you're trying to entertain people, and when you have an opportunity to make a movie, which is a crazy opportunity in itself, it's like, how can I elevate this material to the point where that people are going to enjoy watching it and give it that energy. And from the script level, we wanted to make a babysitter horror movie, but we didn't want to just make another babysitter horror movie. We wanted to kind of play with it and tweak it and put our own sensibilities in it. So adding some of that fun stuff and some of that energy was definitely a big part of the design of it, just so we could enjoy it so much. Because what's the point if you're not having fun?
And it surely is fun, Jess. Now, you're no stranger to horror yourself, but what drew you that you wanted to be part of Night of the Reaper?
I have done, so yes, I've done some horror, but I've done specifically Christmas horror and never a straight horror, which is crazy. And I had started getting into the genre quite a bit with my fiance and had wanted to do it for quite a while. Um, but I didn't want to just be typecast as the victim or final girl because been there, done that. So when I read the script, I started out like, okay, yeah, this is pretty much what I expected. Good, but is it something that I want to do? I don't know. And then we got to the twist, and I went, oh my God, I have to do this. Um, so yeah, it was really just like getting through the whole script and being like, this is perfect for exactly what I'm trying to do right now, which is to break that typecast. Um, so that was why.
That is true. Brandon, there's something about 80s horror that everyone loves, and I want to say it's because of the lack of technology, no cell phones, the danger that actually lurks because you have to rely upon yourself and you can't call for help. Talk about the challenges of transporting this entire production back to the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it is just if you have a cell phone in the scene, it's going to change every decision that a character makes. So if you can strip that away from everybody in the film and do something in this specific time period where there still is technology like VHS and TV and all that stuff, but not the stuff that we're used to that makes us feel safe. Like you rip that away and it just becomes a lot more interesting to me because you don't have those things. But it's just like there's something about that era, and all it reminds me of is like walking through the video store and seeing the box arts and stuff like that. Like the poster that went up, to me, it just feels like such a great. If I was walking down the horror section back in the early 90s or something like that, that's a horror poster that I'd be like, oh, what's that? That's interesting. And so, I think that influenced so much of who I am was just seeing like Sleepaway Camp 2, where she's got the backpack and the Jason, the Freddy glove, and then the Jason mask and stuff. Like those, you're always just like left wondering like, what is this thing? And so, I think just doing the 80s was there for a lot of reasons, but a big part of it was just like going back to my childhood and those movies that I was dying to see but was too young to rent.
Jess, similar question is because, I want to say that you didn't live through the 80s and 90s, and you got to transport back to the 80s with this film and everything's going to be great, or the 90s with Night Blooms, where I'm aging myself because I actually lived through all those decades. But what about as an actor being transported into these period pieces, which I would hate to call myself because I lived those days.
I know. Are they period pieces? That's crazy. I lived through half of the 90s, but yeah, it was really, really cool. I think what's really fun about this movie is it's not in your face 80s. It's not like, you know, what we expect when we like dress up as, like the fluorescent and the
Neon.
headbands. Yeah, it wasn't like that. Um, it was, it just was. And I think, being in that kind of timeless house and dressing in very subtle 80s, like it didn't feel like cosplay. It didn't feel like a costume. It just felt effortless. And I think that was actually really helpful because it just kind of immersed me into that world rather than feeling like I had to work to be a part of it. And yes, I had just done a movie in the 80s, so I did have a little bit of a head start, which was great. And I, would watch things. And honestly, like we had a playlist that we would listen to in the makeup trailer, and it was all 80s. And
Hmm.
yeah, so all of that really helped a lot. But I think my favorite thing is that it's just effortlessly, period.
That is true. And Brandon, to capture the period, talk about the cinematography because of obviously, some of the scenes you have to capture it cinematography wise of, the VHS,
Hmm.
type of scenes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from both the costume and the set designs and stuff like that. Like in Hollywood, the big thing that they can do is they can create the reality that the movie takes place in. But when you are an indie, you can't do that. You have to find it. And so, like, location scouting is such a big deal for this film. Like, for months, I was driving around just looking down streets and stuff like that, trying to figure out where this movie might take place because nowadays so many old houses are being torn down and they're being rebuilt or like one or two on the street, so finding these like time capsules of anywhere in the city is just it's so hard, but when you do you're like this is it, this is what it felt like back then, and so we got to capture that. And the cinematography is all about like let's show these worlds. Like we've got Summer's dancing at the beginning, and we're seeing like the pox ceiling and the arches and all the wood paneling, and that's so important because when I think of my childhood, I think of a lot of wood paneling, and for some reason everybody had wood paneling. And so it was just like we found all these great locations that were just so photographable. I mean, we've got the scene with Hattie when she's in the bathroom and like the wallpaper and the blue tub, and it's just like that's what it looked like. Everything was just garish and weird and muted in other places. It was no one real thing. It was just this complicated time where people didn't really have the best style. Um, and so yeah, and like with the VHS stuff, like a lot of the times I feel like movies kind of do it the phony way where they'll use like an Alexa and they'll shoot and it looks like they've added a filter on it. But we actually use like older cameras to film it, so it just looks completely different from the rest of the movie, and it has that voyeuristic feel that I think that we definitely needed in this film. So, with Clayton, I've worked with him several times now on features, and I've worked with him on commercials, music videos, a million other things for years. But yeah, we've just got this like unspoken language between us, so we can just do things in a specific way.
And Jess, how do you take care of the mindset of your character, because, before and after the twist, it is almost like two different characters.
Yeah, totally. That's a good question. I think that once I understood the twist, then I had to keep that in the back of my mind, even at the beginning. So that was the hardest part, was being as believable as possible in the Deena that we see at the beginning, but keeping a little like 10% of her brain remembering what this is all about. Um, and maybe letting it peer through every now and then, but not enough that you would know the first time, but maybe enough that you would know the second time. Um, and then when we would talk about, Brandon and I would talk about like when it snaps and when it's starting to unravel. And then, yeah, it's kind of bubbling up inside until finally it just comes out. And it feels so good because that side of Deena has been in her the whole time, just like waiting to come out.
Mm.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We mapped it all out because, of course, we didn't shoot in order. So it was kind of, okay, how bubbled up are we at this point? How scared are we now? What has already happened? Kind of keeping a map of where we were. And it was really helpful.
Well said. Well, I do have to wrap up, but Brandon, I want to comment that I love the fact that you stuck with the practical effects in this film, and that is a testament to your being a horror director, especially
Hmm.
with the 80s horror in this case. And Jess, but I do want to ask, speaking of practical effects, congratulations. There's Gen V is coming out pretty soon, but I want to know is how practical is that tail that Harper has in Gen V?
Half and half. I wear like a stub so that my skirt goes out. So it's even uglier than in real life. And then after every single shot that I'm in, they have to go around with balls and charts. So I think I'm very expensive to keep alive, to be honest.
That is wonderful. Brandon, you're gonna have to figure that out. Maybe another monster movie down the road.
She'll have a tail. I love it.
Well, anyways, Brandon, Jess, thank you very much for speaking to us about Night of the Reaper. It is a wonderful film that everyone needs to check out, especially in the dark on a Friday and Saturday night.
Love it. Yeah, thanks, man. Nice to see you again.
Hey, thank you. Bye now.
See ya.
Bye.